Hello, my name is Arthur Padilla, and I am hosting a podcast for Full Life Care. And this week, I want to share with you some information about the Care Team program, which is a volunteer based program designed to provide respite and support for caregivers throughout King County. Interesting. It's an interesting program because we're not talking about the care recipient, we're talking about the caregiver. And this issue has become a monumental issue in our country because of the aging population and the lack of resources. We just won't, there won't be enough. So we need to have solutions in place to absorb the difference. So here's some context. So in 2020, 56 million Americans were over 65. That number looks like it will be up to 95 million people by 2050. So we have some time, about 25 years, to compensate for this growth in the need for support for people who are aging, and interestingly enough, be really focused on the caregiver component because this will fall on family members, community members, friends, that kind of thing. So this Care Team project is a volunteer-based project where you can get involved immediately to start impacting and creating change in our world. Positive change around a very interesting and complex issue around isolation, loneliness, and the responsibility of caring for someone else. It's a huge responsibility. Ultimately, we want to see how you can play a transformative role in caregiving. How can you become a part of this movement to create change? And how do you create or find an avenue for you to connect in the world in a very meaningful way at a time when we need that? We live in a very complex time where connection and meaningful connection is hard to come by. And this is a great opportunity. You get training, you get connection, you get understanding, and then you actually get to see the outcome of positive support and good work. So, with that, I invite you to join me and listen to this podcast. And I started this podcast out with a simple question. I said, please, who are you and what do you do at Full Life Care? And then the rest will follow. Enjoy.
I can go first. I'm Ginger Siebold. I'm the Director of Volunteer Programs at Full Life Care, and I have been with the organization for 19 years and have been involved with volunteer management and overseeing our Elder Friends Volunteer Companionship Program, and now working with care teams.
Excellent. Thank you.
And I'm Catherine Russell. I'm the Care Teams Program Coordinator. I work with the volunteers, training them, supporting them, and continuing to support them as they support the caregiver and the care recipient through the Care Teams program.
My name is Tegun Unegi. I am the Training and Community Outreach and currently working as a intake specialist for the Care Team program.
Excellent. Thank you so much. It's great to have you here today. Ginger, can you give us a little background and elaborate on Full Life Care's volunteer programs, how they got started, all of that? Just kind of give me a big picture of the volunteer experience.
Yeah. I would say so. Full Life Care was founded in the 70s, and I've been here for almost half of that time, if I really think about it now. But when I joined Full Life Care, there was already a really strong commitment to engaging community volunteers. In fact, the organization was started by community members who saw a need and responded with our first type of program, which was Adult Day Health. And that's still something that we do. We have volunteer involvement across our programs, most heavily in Adult Day Health. So we engage student volunteers, interns, community volunteers, and corporate philanthropy to support those programs through activities, through donation drives, and all kinds of support. And then in the 90s, our Elder Friends Volunteer Companionship Program was brought in to the fold, and that was started outside of Full Life and became a longstanding program. And that's where we pair community volunteers one-on-one with isolated older adults to relieve isolation, address the impacts of loneliness on health and well-being. And then just in 2021, we launched Care Teams for Caregiver Respite, and that's our newest program to the organization. It is also volunteer-based, meaning like Elder Friends, we're engaging community members to really carry out the goals and the core purpose of that project.
Great. That's perfect. Thank you so much. It brings up that question about Elder Friends.
Yeah.
And Catherine, can you talk to me a little bit about what's the difference between the Care Team program and Elder Friends? Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think what makes Care Teams different is the team approach. And then also we are prioritizing the caregiver. The caregiver is our primary focus. So the team works together to support whatever the caregiver needs so that they can have respite. So this could mean, for example, having the whole team do a yard project with a care recipient while the caregiver focuses on paying bills or making phone calls, and just not being distracted. Or it could mean that team members visit individually with the caregiver and give her someone to talk to, as her care recipient might have trouble communicating, and she just wants to have some different people to talk to and learn about. So the team approach also allows for flexibility for the caregiver. So the team can work together or separately and continue to support the caregiver, giving her more time. And then the care team also support each other. So the volunteers, if one person can't make it to the caregiver, the other person will, and they support each other if something's going on with the caregiver that they need support. They're there to back each other up. Where Elder Friends is a volunteer matched directly with an elder. So it's more, like one-on-one. And these elders are older adults that live independently. So they're not taking care of anyone and they don't need taken care of. So the volunteer is more like a social support and someone to be a companion to them.
Okay, that makes sense. So there is a difference. They're both volunteers. They get a little bit of training. They're doing that one-on-one engagement, but what their role is and how they participate in that relationship is just a little bit different. So yeah, one's a little bit more friendly, friend kind of thing. We'll hang out, and the other one a little bit more broad. Like you can do a little bit of everything. You could be a friend, but you also might ask to be doing gardening. Or you might, help clean windows, whatever people want to do, kind of thing.
Exactly. Whatever the caregiver needs.
Okay.
They decide what means respite to them. And we never know, and the team doesn't know until they get in there and start asking those questions.
Okay. Oh, great. So all of it is very focused on the caregiver. So this brings up a question. It's not a question that we kind of talked about before, but it's a question that I think is important. Why do you think it's important that you're focusing on caregivers? There's a lot of us out here in the world saying, well, it's the person that needs the caregiving. They need all the help. That's where all the resources should go. Why are we focusing on the caregiver? And because it could be a little confusing. So could you elaborate on that a little bit? Anyone or all of you, actually.
Well, the caregiver is, I don't even, I'm like, what? Like, what could be the caregiver?
That's the response. I'm speechless. I don't know how to start. Exactly.
I mean,
That's
you know,
excellent.
so the caregiver, all the responsibility is on that person. You know, this person could have a full-time job. This person could have children as well as as an older adult that they're trying to take care of.
Mhm.
They're burning, the candle at both ends. And the care recipient, they have the caregiver, they have other family members, they have actually care recipients and older adults that have dementia and physical disabilities. They have lots of resources available to them. Well, the
Mhm.
caregiver doesn't have as many resources, and that's why we really focus on them, because without them, the care recipient is going to be in real trouble. And if the caregiver burns out, it can lead to illness for them. And
Mhm.
so we're trying to prevent all of that. We're trying to offer support. We're trying to say, like, use your volunteers and get the time that you need, see your friends, do whatever you need. And so they're the person we focus on. But this means also that we do take care of the care recipient often, because a lot of times the volunteers work as care companions to the care recipient. So it's not like we say, forget the care recipient, because
Mhm.
Okay.
they are always part of the team and the
Okay.
process.
So it seems to me that part of what we're doing is collaboration, a lot of it, whether it's with other agencies, people, each other, and volunteers. Can you describe how Full Life Care volunteers, staff, and family caregivers collaborate to develop and implement a care team? Like, how does that, you kind of started to talk a little bit about that. Catherine, can you talk a little bit and explore that just a little bit with us? Kind of paint a picture for a volunteer, like how does this make sense to a volunteer?
Yeah, so typically after the care team is formed, they will contact the caregiver and schedule an in-person meeting at the home of the caregiver. And so all the team, the caregiver, care recipient will meet at the caregiver's home. But before that, the care team try to meet socially and start the collaborating process between them with the team. So they might meet for a cup of coffee or go have pizza. Or if they can't, schedule that together, they'll have a separate Zoom date that isn't about training and staff isn't there. And they'll just get to know each other first. And we really emphasize during training, like making care team agreements, like what's important to them, what are their values. And we also, add that to their connection, so they get the sense of who each other are before they go to the caregiver. So then when they meet the caregiver and care recipient for the first time, sometimes the whole family wants to be there for that meeting. So the caregiver, so especially if the caregiver is the offspring of the care recipient. So the father is the care recipient, the daughter is the caregiver. Well, all the siblings want to be there too, to see who's going to be in their dad's home. They want to meet these volunteers, so it's
Excellent.
a big, let's everybody meet.
And so I'm going to interrupt just real quick. And and you guys are really okay with that. I mean, that's part of the process, right?
Yeah.
It's like inviting all of those family members in rather
Yes.
than saying, yeah, let's not talk. It's really listening to all of that, right? Oh, great.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And I mean, and the team will wait until everybody can meet. And sometimes getting that schedule together is a little challenging.
Do they bring food?
Well, that's what I was going to tell you.
Because I want to
That's what I
go.
was
That's
gonna
my,
tell you.
I want
Yeah.
my invite to all of these.
So this might sound really intimidating. You're meeting the whole family at once, not just
Right.
two people, like all these people. Well, recently, one of the care teams decides, let's bring food, so they go to a cafe in the neighborhood of the caregiver and pick up cookies. And they come to the house with these cookies, and they just so happen to have picked the caregiver's favorite cookies from this cafe.
Fabulous. That's fabulous.
And it was a hit. they were in.
That's great. That's great. That's what we want to know.
The caregiver called me after they left and said, "You won't believe it. We just love them." And the cookies were, instrumental. It was wonderful.
Excellent. Oh, thank you for that. That's a great visual for everybody about like how this actually plays out. I love that.
Mhm.
So we haven't heard from you, Teganu. So I'm going to ask you a question, because a lot of this, this is all really light and all of that, but there's also, it's very challenging for caregivers, and it's very challenging to be a caregiver. And so part of your work is doing that, helping caregivers and supporting them. So how do you help care teams improve client outcomes? That's one question. Like, how do care teams do that? And then how do you help care teams help themselves? Like, how are they doing self-care in any way? So both of those things, I think, fall under you. Or how do you experience that with the care teams? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, so the care teams provides a variety of customized social and practical support determined in cooperation with the caregiver to best support them. This may include simple companionship, light household and the yard chores, assistance with shopping and the medical appointments, and help with others' practical tasks. Providing these practical tasks will lessen the burden for the caregiver and improve the quality of life both for the caregivers and the care receivers. Not only for the caregiver and care receivers, these also have a benefit to the volunteers as well. This will give an opportunity for the volunteer. This will give an opportunity to build community and strengthen friendship by participating in a care team with other volunteers. It will give them an opportunity to gain knowledge and skills in caregiving, communication, and self-care and other related topics, and also an opportunity to learn about the community resources.
Okay, that seems like a lot. So are you so you're saying as a volunteer, if I go through this process, you're going to do that kind of training, you're going to give us that kind of information. That's what I'm hearing you say. A little bit of that comes through training, right? And then there's that self-care piece. What does that look like for a volunteer? Like, how does that actually play out on the ground when you're actually working with a team? Do you have a kind of a story or an example?
So caregiving by itself, it can greatly affecting physical, emotional, and the mental well-being of the caregiver.
Yes.
And what the care team approach to this problem is a holistic approach. When we recruit our volunteers, it's basically we train them in a lot of different topics that includes just giving them first of all, I'm sorry, I want to go back. So the care team volunteer comes to our program from different walks of life. Some of them have caregiving knowledge through their parents. Some of them, they don't have anything. So the care teams program is basically, we developed a training manual based on different topics that, and also we provide them ongoing training and support that they can get from us on different topics, and others training that is available both for the caregivers and volunteers is what we call it is Start Full Life dementia training that covers on the topic of basic dementia understanding, how to solve problem, and setting a realistic expectation on effective communications, pleasant events, and how to get active with the environment, and how to communicate with family, and also based on the real case scenarios also the previous volunteers, they will share their experiences to the new volunteers. And also we host different programs during their trainings, actually every quarter's live training or a Zoom trainings as well.
Excellent. All of that sounds so great. So when you're thinking about why we would want to do this, that's one of the reasons that we talk about a lot, is like you get a huge amount. So while you'll be giving a lot, you'll be getting a huge amount. And I've seen some of the training materials and I've seen how that kind of walks through. So I know that folks are getting a really great overview of what's happening and how to manage all of that. The way you organized it, it does seem almost like a college degree. So yeah, good. Congratulations for that. So after all the training and matching and everything that you've done with your caregiver, I assume, this is an assumption, that you quickly hear stories about the volunteer interactions. Can you tell us, Catherine, a little bit about how care teams positively impacted caregivers and their families? Do you have any like success stories that kind of really illustrate for a volunteer, like, why is this important? Why do they keep coming back, right? That's the question. Why would you keep coming back? That's the question.
Yes. Well, what comes to mind is one of our first care teams supported a caregiver in the beginning of 2022. And if you remember, at that time, we were just beginning to test out kind of in-person social interaction at the tail end of the pandemic. And this caregiver hadn't been able to leave her home and see her friends or attend a book club that she had been going to for, 15 years or something. She hadn't been able to do that for a couple of years. So the team came in and individually acted as care companion to her husband. And then she was able to go to her book club and see her friends.
Oh, perfect.
And like the appreciation that she showered on them. And then one of those volunteers, brought an art project to work with the care recipient. And she said he just loved that so much. She said she could tell how much he loved coloring, but she knew what his favorite colors were because those were the ones that were almost used up. And so she had a beautiful little, art piece that they did together, that they collaborated on together. And so that was really lovely. So there are many stories like that of the caregiver who got to see her friends after not seeing them for a few years. The other team, I think I mentioned before, the caregiver who had the team work with the care recipient in the yard while she was in the house.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Well, another thing is, Full Life is gifted tickets to different things. Organizations will give us, or like Woodland Park Zoo gives us tickets
Okay.
that the care teams can use if the caregiver or care recipient want to go to the zoo. They gave us Seattle Symphony tickets and tickets to Chihuly Garden and Glass Art Museum. And this caregiver and care recipient are both physically fit, and they have taken advantage of those free tickets with their care teams and gone to these different, events together. And they sent pictures and they just love it. It's just great.
So great. That's the part that's great. Getting a picture, you're like, oh my God, they texted me a picture. I can't even believe it. That's so great. You're like, oh my God, that's when you know someone's having fun nowadays.
I know. And these are, these are events they might not have gone to, or
right.
just wouldn't have even thought about getting out there and doing.
But something that came to me was on a success story was one particular client is basically our volunteers noticed that our care receiver was living alone. The caregiver was his sister, and she lives in a different apartment. But they noticed that it's not good for the care receiver to live alone, because they brought that to concern to our attention, Basically, what I did was I worked with a caregiver to look for a better option for the care receiver. And finally, we managed to work with a care receiver's case manager, and basically we enrolled him into a different program where the client is successfully relocated to a skilled and to an assisted living. So he graduated from our program, but the outcome was for the client, he's in a better place now.
Oh,
That's one
excellent.
success story.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. That's super great. And that really kind of encapsulates why this is so valuable. Because suddenly there's 8 eyes or 10 eyes on one family instead of 2 eyes once every 6 weeks. Right. And, because the resources are so limited, there is no way that we're going to cover all the bases with the staff. It's just not available. But with this, even if it was that little interaction, it really did change someone's life in some way. That's immeasurable, I think, right? It really is. Quality of life, all that loneliness, all of that is so great. What a great success story. And you're right, they graduated. Maybe putting yourself out of business is the best way to measure success. I think the other piece about this, and for folks that we would want to hear this, is as you learn all of the great stuff and there's all that positive stuff and we get all that feedback, there are also challenges. Can you talk a little bit about what some of those challenges are and what are some of the learnings that you're getting because of those challenges?
Yeah, I kind of think the biggest challenge is sometimes there's a little bit of lag time between the care team, after the care team has formed, and that initial in-person meeting. So sometimes it's scheduling conflicts. Sometimes it seems like it's hesitation on the caregiver's part to have volunteers who are actually strangers come into their home.
Yeah.
And we especially noticed this with our initial teams in the beginning of 2022. Again, we were,
right.
Kind of getting used to what that might look like. And one of the volunteers suggested to one caregiver where this was going on, let's meet in the park. Let's all wear masks. We'll meet in the park, open air. And that's where they all met for the first time. And everybody felt comfortable with that. And then they were able to, move to, in person in the home and that kind of thing. So sometimes it just takes a little time. And the way that we've overcome that challenge is with patience. You just have to be patient.
Right.
And then also, because we've had this experience in the past, we can prepare volunteers who are training now that this could happen. And then the teams don't get as frustrated because they were getting frustrated and we were kind of getting a little frustrated because it seems, oh, this is a great idea having these people come to my home. But then when it's go time, it's a little intimidating for everybody. So now we can prepare people that this might happen.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
I would just say that what I appreciate about this team and about this opportunity to pilot a new program is that we have we're learning. We're definitely in learning mode, and we're trying to address a challenge that that needs multiple, we had to come at it from multiple angles. And I think that we have this unique opportunity that does just inherently require a little bit extra time and patience. Like Catherine was saying, we need, we need 2 to 3 to 4 volunteers for each family that we're serving. And so finding the people and the quantity of community members in the right areas at the right times can also be a challenge. And it's a challenge that we're up to, and we're really excited when we can find that right team, get them connected. So just the learning is ongoing, and it's nice to see that process play out with this team and with the great volunteers that we have.
Oh, excellent. That's perfect. And I think that really, again, it's really important to think about from that volunteer's eyes, like what does this mean and how does this, and what
Yeah.
it sounds like, it could be a little intimidating. So the
Mhm.
challenge is like, this is a place at a time for volunteers who are looking to stretch themselves just a little bit, right? You're in a place where you're really looking to learn something different. I think this is a great opportunity for folks who might who are looking for a really meaningful way to be social, that is not in a bar,
Yeah.
right? That is
Mhm.
not politically motivated, has nothing to do with that. It gets you away from all of that and puts you into a service space, which is so needed and so valuable, right? So all of those sound so important in our world today. And it really teaches us about getting out of ourselves. Like,
Mhm.
how am I going to be a little bit selfless and find some value in giving away, right? And it's not about money, it's about your time. And that's, and you know, all of our time on this little rock, that's not a lot. So
Yeah.
when you give a little bit to someone else, there's something really valuable. So I like all of that as
Mhm.
that visual for volunteers. Why would you do this, and why would you keep coming back? And that's the reason, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when we started this, we thought that we would, the most common scenario would be that we would get teams of people who work together or families that live together who want to volunteer and do some service together. And it hasn't worked out that way. And it's been really nice to see, like, there are, I think, a lot of individuals,
Mhm.
seeking that kind of service opportunity, that kind of connection, and that, to Teganu's point, there's a benefit here for volunteers as well.
Yes.
I think that a service like this, we can all relate to being in the position of that caregiver one day or in the past, and we all can relate to the feeling of isolation and loneliness. We're all affected by that, most recently through the pandemic. And so
Yes.
we
Mhm.
are seeing that volunteers are coming to us specifically because they want to get out there and they want to make those new connections. And we've heard that back from volunteers. There are teams who now play, what do they play, tennis together or pickleball together. And so so in a
Amazing.
sense, this program and being able to like start it at this point in time is helping us really address that big overall issue and challenge of isolation in our communities.
Yes, excellent. Okay, great. Now that we've done all of this conversation and we've seen all of this, I'm sure people are very interested in, how do I engage myself? How do I connect? What's the next step? So can you tell us, how would you get involved? What's the next step for folks? What do they do?
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you go to our website, fulllifecare.org, under ways to give, you can click through to volunteer programs and read there. You can just get a little sketch of the types of ways to get involved. Care Teams is right at the top and you can explore. We also have our online volunteer application, which is a little bit more like an info request. And our wonderful volunteer program supervisor, Jessica, will reach back out to you and really talk with you about your goals, what type of service and experiences you have, and what you're looking for now. We and then take you through the next steps. But we're also starting to host monthly volunteer info sessions that also involve making a handmade card to send to one of our clients through our program. And so those are being hosted virtually every month, and you can get that info this same way. You can also look out for upcoming opportunities to join us for one of those sessions in the community. So we're planning to do that a couple of times this summer in the communities where we most need volunteers.
How would a case manager, how would they even know? Like, where would they find this information? And how would a case manager know that this is an option for their clients? Do you know? Where would they know?
It's basically, this program is, made available to us through Veterans and Human Service Levy. And I just highly encourage the care professional to recommend their clients to the care team program. It's free of charge and it is available for unpaid family caregivers caring for senior age 55 and plus, veterans of any age, active service members, and their families in King County. More information is on our Full Life website. Go to www.fulllifecare.org and you'll find that there.
I guess
So with all of that, that sounds like a great way to end this great conversation. I think there's opportunity for us to do this again, so we can
that'd be great.
further explore some of these success stories. Number one, we'd love to hear more
Yeah.
about that, and I think also a little bit more about why this is important and how this actually plays out, and people
Yeah.
actually get what are the outcomes. Like there
Mhm.
are solid outcomes for folks, like there's solid health outcomes, and there's there's actual facts around that and some science, and maybe we can talk a little bit about that in a future episode. Again, thank you all for being here. This was really great fun and I enjoyed it.